Hey guys, this is MTG Degree, and this is Luke, and today we're doing Fate Reforged as a pre-release draft video. Things to note about this video before we go on is that we're only covering commons and uncommons because they are cards that you are likely to see in the packs that you open. We are also not covering multicolored cards because multicolored cards assume that you've got a certain mana base, and we're not going to do that. And we're also looking for cards that don't ask too much of us. So for example, if a card requires that there already be several creatures on the field, that would be considered not a good card because it asks too much before it becomes good, and will be dead in our hands most of the time. Alright, without much further ado, let's move on. So the first topic that we'll be covering is lands, because these are the most important thing to casting spells, obviously. And what we notice in the new set is that they are not printing as many of them per pack. You can have a maximum of one multicolored land, and often it'll just be a basic sitting at the back of the pack. So our land base is much weaker than we're used to in cons, and so in the case of pre-release, we can certainly expect to be running only 2 colors with maybe a tiny splash for an Ultra Bomb card. Although when this set is being drafted with cons, much more land will be available, and therefore you can get away a little bit more with the 3 color that we've been very used to. Alright, so on to artifacts. There is one in the set that stands out, and that is Hero's Blade. Equipped creature gets +3/+2, and for the sake of limited, it's basically an equip 4 cost. This is still quite good. It stays on the field forever and buffs your creatures. I expect that if you see this in your pack, you should probably pick up one. Alright, so now we're talking removal. First up is Sandblast. It is similar to Killshot from cons, however, it can destroy also blockers, and therefore is far more versatile as it helps you either when you're winning or losing on the ground, and therefore is an excellent pickup. The next piece of removal that we're interested in is Valorous Stance, and this is both versatile and powerful, and therefore, simply pick this card. It is excellent. The next card we're talking about is Whisk Away in Blue. It's an excellent unsummon effect, which also puts the creature on top of their library, stifling their next card draw. And in this new set, we're seeing a lot of enchantments on creatures, and therefore this will sometimes also cause their enchantments to fall off, gaining you card advantage. The next card I'd like to talk about is Bathe in Dragonfire. Deals 4 damage to target creature. Very simple, straightforward, and effective. Pyrotechnics is the last card that I'd like to talk about. It deals 4 damage divided as you choose, and therefore its high casting cost compared to the removal discussed thus far is justified by its versatility. I would pick one of these up in most decks running red. Next we'll be talking about combat tricks for the set. The first that shows up once again is Valorous Stance. This card's ability to make something indestructible or destroy a target creature with toughness 4 or greater is good both on the attack and the defense, and therefore makes it an excellent combat trick. The next card, which is in blue, is Refocus. It untaps a target creature and draws you a card. If you're very, very ahead, it simply draws you a card, which is fantastic to simply cycle it out, and in the case that you're using it as a combat trick, a simple untap can catch your opponent off guard, especially for those who undervalue this card. Winds of Calcisma, which I am not sure that I am pronouncing correctly, may be the best combat trick in the set. Its ability for you to either attack with impunity into many blockers, or to turn around a situation in which you are losing, is fantastic. Also, its ability to simply prevent all damage via a fog effect is far from being useless. Ruthless Instincts continues the theme of both powerful and versatile cards in Fate Reforged. At instant speed, we can either gain Reach and Death Touch until end of the turn, and untap a creature, or we can give an attacking creature +2/+2 and trample. Temur Battle Rage is the last combat trick I'd like to talk about, which gives a creature double strike until end of turn. If its Ferocious trigger is triggered, then it also gains trample. This card is fantastic on the defense or the offense, and is an auto-include in any deck running red. And now let's talk enchantments. The first two are Cloud Form and Light Form, each of them giving you for 3 mana a 2/2 with either Flying and Hexproof or Flying and Lifelink, an extremely good value. If the card that is manifested by these cards happens to be a creature, you can imagine how powerful it will be once it is flipped face up. The last card I'd like to talk about in the enchantment category is Fruit of the First Tree. You gain life and draw X cards, where X is the toughness of the creature that it has enchanted, and it costs 4 mana. The downside of this card is that it doesn't actually do anything for you until the card dies. However, it has such a high potential upside, and makes the card so annoying for your opponent to deal with, that this card can be included in almost any green strategy. The next category we'll be covering is card draw. The first 2 cards are Pressure Point and Refocus, each for 2 mana, drawing you 1 card, and either tapping or untapping a creature. These draw you cards while affecting combat, and therefore are extremely good. The next card draw I'd like to talk about is Abzan Beastmaster, which gives you a solid body, and also gives you continuous card draw if you can fulfill its requirement, which is that you have to have a creature which has the highest, or tied for highest, toughness on the battlefield. Not a hard feat to accomplish in green. The last card draw card I'd like to talk about is Sudden Reclamation, which is a bomb. After this card throws 4 cards into the graveyard, you may select a land and creature from your entire graveyard. This is a strict upgrade over Scout the Borders, and also happens at instant speed, allowing you to do it at the end of your opponent's turn, leaving your mana up for possible combat tricks. Also note that this enables Delve by adding a net total of 2 cards to your graveyard. Play this card. On to white creatures, and our first one is Wardscale Dragon. This is a 4/4 flyer for 6, and as long as it's attacking, the defending player can't cast spells. This guy is a royal pain in the butt to your opponent, and should be included into your high-end game plan in white. Elite Scale Guard is the next card we're talking about. It's got a 5 casting cost, and when it enters the battlefield, it bolsters 2. It has a 2/3 body, and whenever a creature with +1/+1 counter on it attacks, you can tap a target creature the defending player controls. This guy is a nightmare for your opponent in combat, and if it comes down as the only creature, comes down as a 4/5 for 5 with an extremely relevant ability. The next card we're talking about is Dragonbell Monk, who is a 2/2 for 3 with Vigilance and Prowess. The last white creature we'll be talking about is Sandstep Outcast. When it enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, or put a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying onto the battlefield, and it comes down as a 2/1 itself. This card plays very well with all cards like Elite Scale Guard, and also can provide a 1/1 flyer in the air, which is extremely relevant. Blue creatures are next, and we're starting with Mindscour Dragon. It's a 4/4 for 6, and whenever it deals combat damage to an opponent, you can put the top 4 cards of your library or their library in the graveyard. This is clearly a fantastic delve enabler, and if your games are going extremely long, in Limited you can mill out your opponent just with this dragon. Meringue River Prowler is a 2/1 for 3 that can't block or be blocked, and it may be cast from the graveyard as long as you control a black or green permanent. As games go long, this guy will chip away at your enemy until there is nothing left. Mistfire Adept is a 3/3 for 4 with Prowess, and whenever you cast a non-creature spell, a target creature gains flying until the end of the turn. This means that this guy gives your creatures fantastic reach to finish out games, and also provides a combat trick, causing woolly Loxodons to fly up and block their dragons. The next card is Sultai Skullkeeper for 2, and it comes down as a 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, you put the top 2 cards of your library into the graveyard. This guy seems not interesting on the beginning, but if I told you that when he entered the battlefield you put 2 counters on him that can be spent for colorless mana, I have a feeling you'd be jumping all over him. The fact that this guy provides a decent body on turn 2 and also enables your later delves for extra value is fantastic and an incredible common. Right into Being is technically not a creature but a sorcery. It allows you to look at the top 2 cards of your library, you get to manifest one and put the other on the top or bottom of your library. This card is fantastic, allowing you to filter your deck as you like, and also giving you a creature in the meantime. This is a powerful common that will likely be undervalued. The next category is black creatures, and first up we have Noxious Dragon. It's a 4/4 flying for 6 mana, and when it dies, you can destroy a target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. It should be noted that this guy can also pop tokens, because tokens have a converted mana cost of 0. Next is Battle Brawler, who is a 2/2 for 2, so he's already playable, and as long as you control a red or white permanent, he gets +1/+0 and First Strike. This is a fantastic card. Sultai Emissary is next, and it is a 1/1 for 2. When it dies, you manifest the top card of your library, so you basically get 3 power and 3 toughness for 2, but over the course of time. Next is Hooded Assassin, who is basically a 2/3 for 3 if you put a 1/1 counter on him when he comes down, or he can destroy a target creature that was dealt damage this turn, turning unfavorable combat into favorable combat. He also plays very nicely with Outlast Lords. Gurmag Angler is a 5/5 for 7 with Delve, and it is basically the Hooting Mandrills of black. By the time that you're ready to cast this card, you probably have at least 2 cards in the graveyard, making it a good value for its mana cost. The last card is a reprint of Typhoid Rats, which is a 1/1 Death Toucher for 1. We have seen in the past that is simply good and annoying for your opponent to deal with. Alright, so we're in red creatures now, and the first one is Shockmaw Dragon. It's a 4/4 flyer for 6, and when it deals combat damage to a player, it deals 1 damage to each creature that player controls. This is the weakest of the uncommon dragon cycle, and it does not confuse combat damage that much for your opponent. However, it is still playable. The next card we'd like to talk about is Bloodfire Enforcers. It's a 5/2 for 4, and it has First Strike and Trample as long as an instant and sorcery card are in your graveyard. This can be tricky for your opponent because you can add an instant to your graveyard during combat, therefore giving this guy First Strike and Trample. It's going to be a very tricky card to play around, and hopefully it's on your side of the battlefield. Hungering Yeti is the next card we'll talk about, which is a 4/4 for 5. As long as you control a green or blue permanent, you may cast it as though it had flash. This is very interesting for combat, of course, because you can surprise your opponent and eat one of their dudes. If you've left up mana so that you can use this combat trick, at the end of their turn, you can cast this and gain board presence. When cast this way, Hungering Yeti basically acts as though it had haste. Goblin Heel Cutter is a 3/2 for 4 with dash, with 2 colorless and a red. Whenever it attacks, a target creature can't block this turn. This card is pretty okay to hard cast, and with dash gains extra versatility. Mardu Scout is a 3/1 for 2 with dash costing 1 and a red. If your goal is to beat down your opponent as fast as possible, this amount of power early on in the game is often overwhelming. Our last category for this video is green creatures. The first one is Destructor Dragon. It is a 4/4 for 6 with flying, and when it dies you may destroy a target non-creature permanent. This is enchantments, artifacts, even lands. This is very annoying for your opponent, and is a very good high-end green card. The most insane green uncommon is Erishin Warbeast. It is a 6/6 for 7, so very good for its cost, and whenever it deals combat damage to one or more blocking creatures, you manifest the top card of your library. So, it typically will attack ferociously, and even if it dies to some combat trick, they'll have spent a combat trick and a creature on it, and then you'll have a creature left over. Very powerful. The next card, Temur Sabertooth, is a 4/3 for 4, and for 1 and a green, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand. If you do, it gains Indestructible. This card is extremely powerful and will be very hard for your opponent to remove after you've gotten some stability on the board. Even if you never get to activate this ability, this creature is still a 4/3 for 4 and a very solid card even when you're on an extreme defensive position. Eye Knock Guide is a 1/1 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you can put a +1/+1 counter on it, or you can search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, shuffle your library, and put the land on top. This card is fantastic because it is a 2/2 for 2 if you need it to be. It also plays very well with anything that gives bonuses to counters, and it's mana fixing. This is a fantastic card. The last card in our entire set review is Frontier Mastodon. It is a 3/2 for 3. If you trigger Ferocious, it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. This would make it a 4/3 for 3, which is a fantastic deal, and the +1/+1 counter will make it play extremely well with all of the Outlast Lords running about. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and though it's been long, I hope that not only have you learned which cards I think are good, but hopefully that my explanations as to why I think they're good have helped you decide how to evaluate cards in a limited format. If you've enjoyed this video or found it useful, please like and subscribe below. Best of luck in your pre-release and drafting events heading forward. This has been Luke with MTG Degree, and have a good day.